Henry the Red expert build. We're back, people. I'm back. The green screened headband is back. And I'm going to try to make this video a little bit quicker and hopefully not go for an entire hour like I have in past videos. But this video is still going to be very in depth. Really excited to do a Henry the Red video because he's my favorite character. He's the most fun character to play for me personally. And I also think that his build is pretty interesting because there's a lot of different ways you can play him. I mean, there's not a lot of different ways. There's really one main way to spec him, but what you do with your last few points, there's a lot of different ways that you could spend those last few points. And I still question whether or not I'm spending those last few points correctly, but I will explain to you why I spend my points the way that I do. And I'll also give you reasons why it's acceptable to spend them in other ways and why you might want to do that. First, we'll go over his abilities. The first one is Unstoppable. Activating this ability temporarily prevents damage to health or shield. This is arguably the best ability in the game. It just has so much versatility, it's ridiculous. Not only can you activate it in order to not take damage from a really high damage source, like if the boss comes out and they start focusing you, you can pop it and now you have 7 seconds of just wailing on the boss for free. It also has the versatility of being able to be used as a means to get a free revive off, whether that's reviving someone off the ground or resurrecting them at a resurrection altar. So it's really crazy. This ability, more so than probably any ability I use, just saves games from the, like, you will be on the brink of defeat and this ability will save your life. And towards the end of the video, I'll go into why there's a lot of mind games involving this ability, which is why I think it's my favorite ability in the game. I'm also really hoping it doesn't get nerfed. Unfortunately, it seems like the game is kind of, I don't want to say something as extreme as dying, but it seems like the vast majority of people who have a voice that are left playing this game are demon mains, so it kind of seems like we're getting some heavy demon buffs and survivor nerfs coming up. And one of the things I've seen people complain about the most is Henry's ability, so I'm concerned that this might get hit with a nerf, but right now it's the most fun ability in the game to use because of its versatility, in my opinion. Start the match with additional shield bar. This actually is kind of a funny ability because it does more than what you'd think. If I read that, I'd say, oh, so you start with 2 shield bars. So then you when you upgrade, it saves you an upgrade point. But no, it actually means you get an extra. So now you get 5. Obviously, if you're watching this guide, you already knew that, but I thought it was interesting. The warnings always seem weird to me. If you have Eddie's shield, it reflects a percentage of the damage you receive back onto your attacker. Self-explanatory, 30% damage reflected. Not a huge deal, but it's there. Battle Hardened increases maximum health and shield bar length. 10% increase is kind of meh. This is probably the one guy where you want to consider putting all your points into, like, making him more of a tank. You still don't want to put points into Improved Amulet, though, and I'll get into the numbers for why that is the case in a second. For my build, let's go over it for perks. 1 point in the last word, because you have to. 1 point in Artful Dodger, because the breakpoint on that is that it gives you 1 extra dodge for a total of 2. Once you max out your stamina with Pink F in-game, I don't think it's worth it to put more points into that. I just don't. 4 points into maximum health because he's already got a ridiculous amount of health with the 1300 base health plus another 10% plus another 25% on top of that. That makes him very, very tanky, so you definitely should put 4 points into this no matter what your build is, in my opinion. Always 4 points into that. I like to put 3 points into Reinforced Amulet so I can get 10% damage reduction. Damage reduction is still pretty good, especially on a build like this, like I have, where you're really just stacking damage reduction all the time. And it's also on Reinforced Amulet, which is good on him because he's a warrior and he gets double shields whenever he uses an amulet, so that's very, very good. 1 point into quicker cooldown, 5%. It doesn't really matter to you. You're just doing this if you're following my build to get over to Seasoned Survivor Basic. The reason I put 3 points into this is because as of this video, which it's funny whenever I make these videos, then a patch comes out the next day that completely changes the way you would make this build. As it stands right now, demons still spam basics like crazy. That's still the main way that demons try to beat you in the mid game. So being able to have this is really important, because your main job as a warrior, especially as Henry, who's the best tanking character in the game, is to put yourself between the possessed unit and the squishier characters on your team. If you're doing your job as a warrior, the demon player will try to focus down like your support, and you need to get in between them and cut them off. And that's why this is here, is to mitigate how much damage you're taking from those possessed basics, because trust me, good demon players are still going to spam you with them. Devastating Force, just 1 point into this. I'll get more into why we don't put more points into melee damage in a second. I put 3 points into Siege Stars for balance bar damage and 2 points into Blunt Force Trauma for more balance bar damage. Balance bar damage is still king at this point in the game. Again, there'll probably be a patch tomorrow that just nerfs balance bar completely. As it stands right now, balance bar is king. So this is a no-brainer. In my opinion, and we'll get more into this in a second, I think this is enough balance bar damage. It's why I don't put points into stunning strikes. I don't feel like I feel like it's 2 hits and they're stunned for the most part. Whenever I use this is what I feel like. So I don't feel like I need any more balance bar damage, and putting points into stunning strikes, I think these 2 maxed out is enough for me. And then I've got 3 points into Tougher Than Hell. More damage reduction. That basically means that as long as you have shield, whenever a basic unit comes after you, you have 33% damage reduction, which is crazy. And you're already super tanky if you had no damage reduction. So your crazy tankiness plus 33% damage reduction practically makes you a mini boss for demons that spam basic unit possessions. So that's why I'm taking that. This is kind of the thing we'll talk about the most, where I'm like, I'm not really sure what to do with my last few points. I put them into Cutting Blows, and the main reason that I'm doing that is because if you're playing against a warlord where they have that ability that makes it so they cannot be stunned when they're in that little AoE area, I like to have this as a backup, so that, like, let's say you're playing a warlord and they have that ability so that they can't be stunned, and a legendary sword drops. Well, that's ideal, because now you've got 3 points into Cutting Blows. Sword's going to do a ton of dismemberment damage, and that's a hard counter to warlord. So for me, this is kind of like, oh, I'm putting 3 points into this because I don't think you really need melee damage, and this is a way for me to kind of hard counter warlord if possible, in case we run into one that's doing that, or that is high enough level to have that unlocked. That's basically it. This is why I'm taking it. These 3 points could be spent in a number of different ways. I'll just go over that right now. These 3 points, I will say I would not spend it into Improved Amulet, and I'll show you why right here. This was in one of my shield videos, but essentially what it means is that on Henry the Red specifically, if you put 3 points into that, it results in 18.975 shield per bar, extra shield per bar, and an extra 94.975, so essentially 95 shield total when at 5 full bars. I'm glad that worked before that died on me again. There's something wrong with, like, my photo app on my computer. So essentially 95 extra shield for an investment of 3 points, excuse me, and that's at full bars. So essentially you could take, like, maybe 1 extra light attack if you're at full bar. Is that worth it? No, it's just not. Not worth it. I don't care what you say. It's just not worth it. A lot of these things I'm like, it's kind of up for opinion. You can decide whether or not it's worth. This is not worth it. Do not put points into this. It's just not worth it. Maybe we'll see a buff in that. Probably not. But yeah, don't put points into that. The only reason I'd put points into it is maybe you want to go to Fear No Evil. Personally, I don't think this is a huge priority, especially with this build. If you're going all in on balance bar damage, this would be more of a priority if you were somebody who invested heavily into melee damage, because then you're a serious threat to downing your team. If you're not going into melee damage, like, at all, which is what I'm doing here, then this is less of a priority, because even if you do hit teammates, you're not going to be doing a ton of damage to them unless you just, like, totally stun lock them. And if your hunters are doing their job, they should be able to shoot you and knock you out of your possession relatively quickly, and you're not much of a threat with ranged because, hey, you're a warrior. So I don't think fear resistance is as much of a priority on warriors. You could put 3 points into Seasoned Survivor. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a bad thing. If a boss focuses on you, having an extra 13% damage reduction is really nice. The only reason I don't put points into it for me is because I have Unstoppable for that. I don't really like to use Unstoppable on basics when basics get possessed because of how much demons can spam them. They can't spam bosses though. So when a boss comes out and if a boss starts focusing on me, then I'll go ahead and pop my Q, and I don't take any damage. So I feel like I don't need damage reduction at that point. If you're somebody who really wants to save your ability exclusively for when a teammate goes down, then maybe you put your 3 points into this. Me personally, I've never felt that I need to do that, because if a teammate does go down, usually I could get my ability off cooldown fast enough to where I could get them back up, or at the very least grab their soul and make it to an altar and res them, and I'll have my ability back up. So I've never really felt the need to like hang on to it that much. I still feel like I could use it against bosses whenever a boss shows up, and that'll really help me with dealing with them. Seasoned Survivor Elite, I don't think you need to put points into this because elites at the moment that this video is made are just not good. And demon players just don't possess them like ever. So it seems like a waste of points. Maybe that'll change in the future, but as it stands right now, demon players just don't possess elites because they're not very good. So it's kind of a waste of points. So let's go over real quick why I do not put points into melee damage. It's because I have always believed that it's really on your hunter to deal damage. Your role as a warrior is to soak up damage and stun things. And that's how I think you should build your character. That's where I think you should be allocating your perk points. Melee damage just doesn't do enough damage to justify its investment, I don't think. So that's why I don't put any points into melee damage at all. I think it's just better to go full balance bar, and hopefully at some point in this game, if it survives long enough, survivors will have a better grasp of what their roles should be. Because in an ideal scenario, what happens is you're playing Henry the Red, basic unit gets possessed, you stun them right away, and then your hunter, while they are stunned, lines up a headshot and blows them away. And that's how that whole interaction should work every single time. Your hunter's doing their job, the warrior's doing their job. That's how it should go every single time. You don't need melee weapon damage because your hunter should be able to take them out easy enough. So that's why I don't invest into melee weapon damage. Now again, you have these 3 excess points. I could see you maybe like putting those 3 points into heavy hitter for a little extra damage, putting these 3 points into devastating force for a little extra damage. It really just depends on how much you like heavies or lights, which ones you prefer. I really don't like heavies. So even though like numbers wise, it would be smarter to put 3 points into this, because technically it's going to give you, like 2% more damage if you care about that. I just like having the freedom of using what I want to use, either heavies or lights. So I would take devastating force. The way that I would justify that, if I were going to do so, is that when you get to the late part of the game, when the demon has boss maxed out and they cannot be stunned anymore, especially the book phase, that's when you have to rush down the boss as fast as possible. And maybe you need every little bit of damage you can get on warrior, because at that stage in the game, you know, the 13% extra damage could be the difference between that boss getting a heavy attack on the book off or not. There also could be a point where your hunter's not very good and they run out of ammo. And now the only way, I mean, if that happens realistically, if the demon's any good, it's over. You're losing no matter what. but maybe that little bit of extra melee damage can make the difference. I don't think it will, so that's why I personally put 3 points into cutting blows. But I'm just saying, if you are somebody who wants to invest into melee, maybe that's why you do it. Razor's Edge increases dismemberment damage of sharp weapons. The reason I don't really put points into this is because I don't really want to go all in on like dismemberment. Dismemberment just seems really inconsistent. It's nice to have it as a backup against a warlord, like I said, but you only have so many points you can spend, and I just think all the rest of these are more important. Like, I'm not going to take 2 points out of this and put it into that. I'm not going to take 2 points out of blunt force trauma and put it into Razor's Edge. All these other perks I think are just better than this. And like I said, I just find dismemberment to be extremely inconsistent. It seems like limbs don't always fall off the way they should. So I don't want to invest that heavily. Like, I like to have cutting blows as a backup, but once I go into Razor's Edge, now I'm kind of into a full dismemberment build, and I don't want to get into a full dismemberment build. Sting Like a Bee, again, it's extra melee damage, which I already explained why we're not going into melee damage. Fighting Shape, even if you were somebody who was going to go all in on melee damage, I still probably wouldn't take this on Henry, because unlike, say, AOD Ash, he doesn't have a way to heal himself. Like, AOD Ash could pop his Wiseman's Brew and top himself off so he can, get Fighting Shape back. Henry the Red can't. So there might be a number of times where you're sitting at like 93% health and you're not getting the 15% damage bonus, and it's like you're still too high health to justify burning like a Shemps to top you off to get that extra damage. So I wouldn't really take Fighting Shape on anyone except AOD Ash, because AOD Ash is the only warrior that has the ability to heal himself at the moment. Second Wind is just bad. Don't take it under any circumstances. 20% extra damage. It's 5% more, but you got to be under 50% health. Dude, if you're under 50% health, you should heal yourself. You shouldn't be hanging out under half health. That's very dangerous, so don't ever put points into that. Stunning Strikes, again, maybe I'm crazy, but at least in my testing, and I didn't do like extensive testing on this. This is just an eyeball test of me playing a lot of Henry the Red. I've never felt like Stunning Strikes made the difference between something getting stunned or not. It always feels like things pretty much get stunned into heavies. Maybe there's a difference on like bosses, but for basics, that seems to be the case. So I've never felt like I really needed to invest 4 points to max this out, and that would make like a world of difference. But if you wanted to, this is one build I kind of flirted with. Was doing this, just take 1 point out of that. You still get a nice 8% damage reduction on basic units. But if you do feel like there's some sort of break point here that's being reached, you can go ahead and take those points out, get rid of that dismemberment, put 1 point into Fighting Shape to get over to here and max this out. If you want to. I won't yell at you if you do. Again, same thing with Weapon Master. You just don't care about melee damage. And by the way, Weapon Master two-handed, I would never really take this because it's just too far down the tree. I mean, maybe you would with Scotty because of his axe, but even him, I don't know that you'd go all in on melee damage. But yeah, this is what I would do perk-wise for Henry. Balance bar is king, a little bit of tankiness is king, and that's kind of what you're doing here with Henry. And that's kind of what his role is. All right, let's check out Pink F upgrades. Boy, I'm really glad that I was able to show that screenshot before it died on me, because I actually do these all in one take. I try not to do any editing, because then you're up all night waiting for stuff to render, so I try to be a one-take Jake and do everything all in a row. That's why if I ever like have to stop and think about something, it's because I don't edit. That's why. PayCaf upgrades. I always like to, well, I shouldn't say always. It's between shield and stamina. Like, you really want to get stamina upgraded right away to get that extra dodge, because the extra dodge is going to make a big difference. It kind of depends on what you find. If I'm in an area that has a ton of high level crates that's dropping a ton of pink F to where I can max out my shield quickly, and I have a bunch of amulets on me, I'll probably max out shield first, just so I could just burn two amulets right away and get 4 shield. That's a ton of value really early on, so I'll probably do that. If it's a case where like, oh, I found 1 blue chest and and we're like in the middle of nowhere and there's no other chests really nearby right now, then I'll probably put 2 points into stamina, just so then that way I could get that extra dodge right away. So it's really between these two is what I would max out first. But yeah, it'll depend on your situation. After that, I'm going to go health because, again, I just want to make him even tankier. After that, I'm going to go fear. 20% fear reduction. Why not? Mostly because you just don't care about ranged or melee for the most part. Melee. This one, you could maybe take this before fear just because of the attack speed. You don't care about melee damage, but attack speed does matter because the faster you attack, the faster you're going to stun things. So maybe you take this over fear. In fact, I probably would say most games, I probably do take melee before fear. So I'd say, depending on the circumstance, you're taking either stamina or shield first. Then after that, I'm probably going to put points into health. Then I'm going to put points into melee, then fear, then ranged. You don't care at all about ranged. If you don't even put points into ranged, it probably wouldn't make much of a difference. You still want to do it, though, just because of like dealing with teammates being possessed. So that's what I'm doing for pink F upgrades as far as weapons go. For ranged, this guy's a warrior, man, so you don't really care so much about ranged. Your main job when you're dealing with ranged weapons is going to be knocking teammates out of possession. So the king for you most of the time as a warrior is the pistol, because you can stun lock people. And if you happen to get possessed, stun locking somebody else isn't a huge deal because you don't deal a whole lot of damage. But it is a huge deal if you're using it, like, again, if your hunter gets possessed, being able to stun lock them with a pistol until everybody can focus their attention on them and knock them out of their possession can make the difference between winning or losing games. So the pistol's kind of king. It's also nice because most of the time your hunters are not going to be using pistols. They're not going to be using pistol ammo. They might use a revolver, so, you know, make sure you check with them. Make sure you're not taking away revolver ammo. But for the most part, they're not going to be using pistols. They're going to be using long ammo or special ammo. After that, I would say the blunderbuss. And oddly enough, well, I'd say the blunderbuss, the crossbow, and the hunting rifle are all kind of on the same tier. The reason for that is because of the flautist against the necromancer. That's why these are so high up here. The warrior can one-shot the flautist with any of these guns, assuming that the necro player is not taking that perk. It makes it so the flautist has more health. Then you can one-shot them with these, which is really nice because these have really high range. The hunting rifle, the reason, like, these two can one-shot them, assuming they have that perk. The hunting rifle's downside, obviously, is that it takes long weapon ammo, which is going to take away from your hunter most of the time. The upside, of course, is that it has 2 shots. So if they do have that perk that increases flautist health, you get 2 shots and can kill them. Whereas these two, you need to reload before you can get off a second shot, which takes a lot longer than firing off 2 shots from the hunting rifle. And even if the reason it's still up here is that even though you do take away long ammo, you're not going to take away much if you're only using it to take out a flautist whenever it pops up. That's why I have these 3 up here, specifically because of the necromancer. After that, I would say anything that's kind of like decent range-wise to help deal with possessed teammates is what I would put up here. So I'd say lever action and revolver kind of B tier for that reason. Both decently high fire rates that can allow you to stun lock possessed teammates, and they both have decent range, so that's why they're both up here. After that, I'd say probably the rest are there really isn't a C tier. I would say if I were to do anything, I'd do this. Because again, lever action rifle, it takes long ammo. You don't want to take long ammo away from your teammates. Revolver is kind of what you take if you can't find a pistol. Like if your hunter's not using pistol ammo and you can't find a pistol or handgun ammo, then go ahead and use the revolver. Then I'd put lever action down there, and then I'd put all the rest of these down here. None of these are very good at stun locking teammates. Like these all just have too short a range to be able to stun lock a hunter who might be far away from you. Explosive crossbow just doesn't do a ton of damage, so it's not really going to knock people out of possessions. The saw gun is just bad because it's not going to be good at taking out Flautus because it's really hard to hit shots with. It's just a bad weapon. So I'd put all these D tier. For melee weapons, I think you can guess what's at S tier. It's the sledgehammer. As always, the sledgehammer in S tier. Hey, chainsaw D tier because the guy can't even use it. Sledgehammer's at S tier. That's what you're picking up all the way. If that's it. There's no more. I can't elaborate further. The sledgehammer is king. After that, I'd say in A tier, you have these other like blunt weapons that are pretty decent, like the mace and the shovel. After that, you have these weapons that like are decent in terms of like dismemberment, but also still have a decent amount of balance bar damage. So I'd put these kind of B tier. So for me, I'm always like, oh, I'm looking for a sledgehammer. If I can't find a sledgehammer, I'm taking one of these two. If I can't find one of these two, I'm taking one of these three. That's kind of where I'm at with that. And then after that, you're taking these blunt weapons that are, again, placeholders. Like if you just spawn in and these are the first two things you find, you're going to take one of these. Probably drop it right away, though, as soon as you find one of these up here. Also, I do want to make mention that with this build, it's better to use a common sledgehammer than it is to use like even a legendary anything else, basically. Like if you find a legendary bat or a legendary axe, you probably give that to somebody else and just keep the common sledge, because the only thing you care about is balance bar damage. And balance bar and dismemberment are not affected very much by an increase in rarity. It's like 1 point with each increasing rarity, so it's not a huge deal. So you'd rather take a common sledge throughout the whole game than upgrade in rarity with one of these that does less balance bar damage. It would be better on somebody else. Really chainsaw should be an F tier if there was one, but there's not. But then all these would be down here with this. These are all the ones that you really just do not want to pick up under any circumstances, at least with this build. All right. Then, as far as gameplay goes, the main thing that I want to talk about very briefly is the Q ability, his ability that makes him invulnerable. There are things that can knock him out of an animation. Any sort of grab from a boss character can knock you out of it, and the demon dash can knock you out of it. So the grab is like Henrietta, the motorboat ability, Ash's grab where he sucks the juices out of you, Elagos's grab, and also his little goofy AoE like lightning ability that will also stun you. And then of course finally the demon dash. So what you want to consider is anytime you're in this sort of interaction. So I'll give you a scenario. Let's say that a teammate goes down and you've got your ability up. What you need to do is force the demon player to make a decision. So if you see a teammate go down, don't just pop your ability right away and go for the res. Because if you do that, a good demon's going to time out your res. You know, they're going to wait about 3 seconds till you almost have them res, and then they're going to demon dash you and knock you out of it. And then once they knock you out of it, they're going to spawn in some sort of unit, like a basic unit, possess them, and then run at you and hit you. By that time, your ability only lasts 7 seconds. So their hit is going to go through right as your ability expires before you can res the person off the ground. That's how a demon wins that interaction. So what you have to do is force the demon to make a decision. So what you want to do is go and try to pick them up without activating your ability. So now the demon either has to burn demon dash right now, in which case, oh, hey, thanks. Now I could just go right back up and go for the res. And then they have to spawn in a basic unit, and then you can pop your Q and you'll be able to survive any sort of attacks they have. Now, I will say a good demon player, as long as they have enough energy, can win this interaction every time. Probably shouldn't even say this for the sake of demon players out there. But basically, the other thing too is that if you go past the fear threshold, they're gonna win, because then they could just possess you, and then you lose your ability. So like, they could demon dash you. You go for the res. They can spawn in something and possess it. Then you activate your Q. And then they could see, oh, he's got his Q activated. If you're above the fear threshold, then they could depossess and then possess you and then run you away. But then I think even in that situation that maybe they can't run with you very far, so then you could probably just get back and res them, but they might bleed out before that happens. So that you can see there's a lot of back and forth here. It's quite the mind game. So what I like to do, let me say exactly what I like to do. Teammate goes down, I'm going to go for the res without activating my ability. I'm doing this to bait out demon dash. If they demon dash me, then I go back for the res after I get jump scared. At that point, they're either going to possess me if I'm above the fear threshold, or they're going to spawn a basic or possess a nearby basic, whatever the case might be. If they possess me, that's great. I could just sit there, wait for the possession to end, and then I could go back for the res, and I win that interaction. If they spawn a basic unit and then possess them, now I wait for them to run up and try to hit me, and then I can activate my Q and then go for the res. And that's pretty much it. That's like the whole interaction. So bait out the demon dash first without activating your ability. Once the demon dash comes out, go for the res again without activating your ability. Then if they possess something, wait it out for them to either attack you or for you to come out of your possession if you're the one who got possessed. Then activate your ability and go for the res. And hopefully at that point in time, your teammate hasn't bled out. This really only works if this is like the first time your teammate has gone down. If they've gone down a bunch of times and they're bleeding out super fast, you're pretty much screwed either way. But that's how you want to approach that interaction under normal circumstances. Outside of that, just basic tips is you're trying to body block for your teammates. You're trying to get in there and put yourself between the possessed unit and your team. The name of the game is stunning units. Also make sure, please, if you're playing warrior, if you stun a unit, you need to immediately back off or get behind them, because the worst thing that warrior players will do is stun a possessed unit and then just freaking sit there right in front of them and not give their hunters a lane to headshot. If you do that, you are giving a huge dub to the demon player. Please, the second they are stunned, get out of the freaking way so that your hunter can lay down headshots. I'm begging you. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see warriors make, is not getting out of the freaking way. So stun things, make sure that you're tanking for things. The other time that you're going to use your ability, if it's not to res people, personally, I like to save it for like bosses. If I'm doing a good job of tanking and getting in between them, good players, I think eventually, if they're playing against good survivors, will realize I can't really, like, if I just keep trying to run after the support, the warrior's going to keep cutting me off, and the support's going to have 3 dodges and be able to dodge most of my combo anyway. I just have to admit defeat and just go after the warrior. And so if the boss starts focusing you as the warrior, then you can activate your Q and basically get free stuns on them. If they're smart and they see that you activated your Q, then they'll leave you and be like, there's no point in hitting this guy. It's not going to do anything. I might as well go try to attack somebody else and see if I can sneak a few hits in. But that's how I typically use his ability. For the most part, I'll save it. It really depends on the skill of the team, too. If the team's really good, I might save the ability because it's like, I don't even need it. We're going to waste this boss in 3 seconds flat anyway. So yeah, you really want to put yourself between the possessed unit, whatever it might be, and your teammates. That's what you're doing. You're trying to tank as much as you can and take pressure off of your team. Once you get to the book phase, please hug that book if you're the warrior. Because the main thing that you want to try to do is put yourself between the book and whatever possessed unit there is. Good players are going to be able to get around you and hit the book anyway, but right now there's an absolute just epidemic with demon players just rushing the book. I don't know what it is, but demon players figure out the meta in this game really fast compared to survivor players. Like, survivor players are just dummies who never figure out how to play. I don't know why. Demon players, like 99% of them know, oh, rushing the book is like OP right now. So they all do it. And that means that even players who are not very good, demon players are not very good, but they know, like, oh, I need to rush the book. They may not know how to get around you, and they might panic and just possess something and immediately start swinging. If that happens, you can position yourself between the book and that possessed unit, and hopefully they'll hit you instead of the book. And if that happens, that's a huge win, because right now the book phase is such a mad dash. Every single hit that you could take away from the book is a huge deal. So really, really try to position yourself, hug that book, put yourself between whatever the possessed unit is and the book. One last thing I want to add too is that if you're running into somebody who's spamming, like basic unit possessions, don't be afraid to use like F chain. You're not really F chaining, but like, let's say there's one possession on the field, right? You want to hit F on that guy so that you could take away the demon's ability to possess them. So even if it's not like a finisher, use that to put them in an animation so that they can't be possessed. And a lot of times there's latency and they'll possess them mid animation anyway, but that's when you want to do it. I do want to say though, do not F chain with warriors. You're not there to F chain. That's really something that all 3 other roles can do depending on who they're playing. But you don't really want to do that as a warrior. You want to go around and take out basics whenever there's not a possession on the field. And then the second a possessed unit does hit the field, you want to run at them and stun them as quickly as you can. That's your role. You're going around. You're not really using finishers at all, except in those rare scenarios that I just mentioned. Like if you're on the blue objectives, you're going to go around and hit basics and take them out. You can take them out relatively quickly as a warrior, even without any melee damage perks. You're going around hitting them, taking them out as best you can, and then the second a possessed unit hits the field, go after them, stun them as much as you can. Mix in heavies and lights as much as you can. Light attacks tend to lock on to targets really well, and they're difficult to interrupt. Heavy attacks don't lock on as well and are really easy to interrupt, so just keep that in mind. That's also important for like Henrietta. You run into a Henrietta who uses her fart gas. A lot of times your heavy attack, especially with a sledgehammer, the animation is so slow that the gas will interrupt you mid-heavy swing, so you might have to do lights instead. So that's just something to keep in mind. But that's pretty much it for this expert build guide on Henry the Red. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll try to keep making content for this game, but I'm kind of at the moment waiting for some new content to come out. I think most people who are playing Evil Dead right now are waiting for that to happen. But I appreciate you all for watching the videos as always. I hope this helps you. Hope it gives you a better understanding as well for how to play the warrior role in general. And if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it. As always, please subscribe and like the video if you haven't already. And that'll pretty much do it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much.